Hey everybody, welcome to tonight's event. We're going to have a great interview and talk on sports analytics. To introduce the speaker tonight is Dennis Ross, the president of the Business Analytics Society. Dennis, take it away.
Hey everyone, thanks y'all for coming out tonight. We've got a really special guest tonight. He is currently a student at Purdue studying data science, math, and economics. And he's authored 2 books on the topic of sports analytics. He is able to take analytics and work his way to some of the top teams in sports. And so without further ado, here's Jeremy Frank.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I know this is a Tennessee thing, so I want to apologize. Do not blame me for the actions of the referees in the bowl game this year. Didn't have anything to do with it, but I hope we can find some common ground on sports analytics, and you guys don't get too upset at me for that result of that game.
Oh, there's so many sports games. I think Jeremy, are you there? Everything looks to be going good. We got everything set up. Jeremy, are you there? How's everything going? Your video is paused for a second right here.
Yeah, did you hear what I said there?
We did. Yeah, no, don't blame you for the actions of the bowl game. I was saying how like it's so when a game goes crazy and your video's paused for some reason, double check on the phone real quick. I know we had everything set up and it looks to be fine. Your video's paused right there.
Sorry about that.
Reconnect.
Okay.
There we go. We're good to go. Jeremy, Frank, thank you so much. And we will not blame you for the actions of any referees during the bowl games. Were you ever remember the Derek Dooley years at UT? I don't know if you know of our old coach, Derek Dooley.
Can't say I'm the biggest Tennessee sports historian, but I'll take your word for it.
We've had an interesting, someone said Music City Bowl was still a great game, top 3 bowls this year. So they enjoyed it. And Jeremy Frank, like you, when it comes to sports statistics, you know baseball stats. Like your book, especially to start out with right here, you have 2 volumes of the book out so far, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you are a senior, right, at Purdue, or junior or senior?
I'm a junior. I'm graduating after the fall of next year, so I'm kind of like a halfway between junior and senior year, but in my 3rd year.
That is absolutely astounding. I'm in my 40s and I've written 0 books. So amazing work right there. And I guess take us over a little bit of your journey and how this all got started, or how did you get started with sports analytics?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I was a big Cubs fan. I'm not sure what the baseball fan background is of Tennessee students, but a big Cubs fan. My dad's a Sox fan. My mom's a Cubs fan. So I grew up just a big baseball fan. I wasn't like the best player. I'd play Little League and such, but I'm 5'9". I wasn't that great at baseball, but always a huge fan. Also, my best subject growing up was math. I'm sure a lot of your students may feel the same way. So I always had a love for math. And I watched the movie Moneyball when I was probably like 10 years old. And it showed that like there's a career path for people who are really good at math and who really like baseball, but also aren't really good at baseball. So that kind of like opened the door for me for something that like, oh, that would be like, I know a lot of people want to be astronauts or the president or whatever. I want to be the nerd who like no one knows, but like helps like make trades for guys and for a baseball team. So I've kind of ever since then kind of been trying to work towards that kind of dream. So freshman year of high school, I started my Twitter page, which is called MLB Random Stats. If you like random baseball statistics, I would definitely go give it a follow if you're not already. And basically the handle speaks for itself. Just whenever I can find an interesting stat tidbit that maybe they would say on ESPN or during a broadcast or something, like maybe this player's the first player to have a 300 batting average and 40 home runs in the season since this player in 1972 or something like that. That's kind of the things I'd post on my Twitter page. Nothing too insightful, but baseball is a very historical sport, so people love references to its history. So it's been able to grow since then. I think it's probably been 6 or 7 years since then, and I have over 80,000 followers. So that's definitely really opened the door for me for a lot of opportunities. Like you mentioned, I've written a couple of books about the history of baseball, kind of looking at it through a statistical lens. And that's been really cool to not only just help other people learn about baseball history, but also myself. I learned a lot. It requires a lot of knowledge to write 500 pages about a subject. So I've definitely become very like, I don't know, way more technically detailed in the knowledge of baseball history than I don't think anyone would ever want to be. But I currently am a student at Purdue studying data science with minors in math and econ. I have an internship with the Astros lined up after this year's over. So I'll be working in their research and development department, which will be really cool. But yeah, that's pretty much a lot about me. I don't think it's everything about me, but that's kind of how I've created some opportunities for myself in the sports analytics world.
No, I think that's an absolutely amazing story. And Moneyball was such a game changer. It came out when I was in graduate school. I have my Master's of Science Business Analytics. And you think about what excites us as kids in these possible career paths. And I just want to mention we have a new command in the chat now. We have Jeremy Mubot, our class mascot, can actually tell you Jeremy's Twitter in the chat. So in case you want to check it out, we have Avery in the chat mentioning that they've seen your tweets and they follow you. Alex is mentioning. So you definitely have a lot of fans here at UT. And it's really great to hear how, one, if students want to follow in your path, because I'm sure there's a lot of students out there saying, I'd love to get internships. I'd love to start working in sports analytics. What kind of skill sets help you out? Do you do R? Do you do Python? I'm not going to push you one way. We have a favorite, of course, and maybe you do. Do you do SQL? Tell us about your skill set and what's helped you do sports analytics.
Yeah, I also wanted to shout while we're naming people. I know Devin messaged me on Twitter earlier today saying that he was excited to watch. So definitely, I know he mentioned my name in class. So thanks, Devin, for helping me get connected with Professor Stevens. But yeah, my skill set, I feel like I look at it. I look at a lot of the kids in my classes, and I definitely think everyone looks at this way, where they're like, wow, I'm definitely not as good at coding or stats or whatever as the kids sitting next to me. I think a lot of people feel that way, including myself. I don't think I'm really that great technically in any specific subject. I'm comfortable working in Python, comfortable sometimes working in R, although the error messages kind of piss me off sometimes. I've gotten way better at SQL over the last year. I worked for Sports Reference over the summer. I still work for them now, but I had a 40-hour a week internship with them last summer, where I was working kind of as a data scientist or like a data intern for them. And I didn't really know SQL that well coming in, but everything that their sites are built on is in SQL. Like if you go to baseballreference.com, that's one of the sites they manage. So you can find baseball stats for any player that's played in the majors or in the minors, pretty much in the history of baseball. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of tables in their database, and I was not really comfortable with it at first, but I learned a lot really quickly in the first week or so of my internship. And now I try and use SQL whenever I can, just because I didn't really realize how powerful it was before, but I've kind of become at least relatively decently skilled at it. So I guess in the Python versus R debate, I looked like from your intro, you guys are more of an R thing, which I think for a stat class would definitely be more valuable. I think if you're taking a stats class and looking to program, R is probably better because of the skill or like the tools they offer statistically. But I think I like to use Python more because a lot of my classes are like just pure coding classes, and you can't really code as much in R. So I try and learn Python for coding and then try and find ways to apply it to stats as well. I try and like to keep it in one thing. So I guess if I had to pick one, I would say Python. But if you're just doing stats work, I think R is just as good and probably easier to learn too. So
I think you hit upon it, and you're actually doing what I tell students is the best avenue is to be good. Like you said, Python's your main, R's your secondary, and then you said SQL. That's really what we've been talking about at our university. And the conversation is, one, we need to just have students good at a coding language, and then two, SQL is very valuable. Learning how to work with SQL, and we do have classes at UT that cover that. So really what it comes down to is wherever you go work, kind of integrating yourself into their system. Like you were saying, they're using SQL, so you're getting better. And that firsthand experience, I think you said within a week or two, just practicing and experiencing it. And I guess one of the big things is, I guess you've been running MLB Random Stat. I put it on here so I know what to say. You've been running MLB Random Stat since you were in high school, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, since freshman year.
And so one of the biggest things is over the years, I've been teaching now for 10 years, and I have so many students come to me and say, I want to work with a major league team. My number one advice is start getting experience now. Besides just the skill set, what would you say to someone who's like, I want to work for the Braves, we're kind of close to Atlanta. I want to work for the Cubs or whoever. What would your advice be to students?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny because I feel like a lot of people have asked me that question over the last couple of years, and usually my answer is like, I don't know, like I don't work for a team. But I guess since I've gotten the internship, I don't technically work for a team yet, but I guess I'm a little bit more qualified to answer, although it's just an internship. It's not like it's that big of a deal. But I guess my recommendation would be there are so many questions in sports analytics out there that have not been answered or have been tried to be answered, but there's no definitive yes or no answer to it. The data is all out there for the most part. Like, do your own project and put it on your resume. You don't have to put it on your resume if you're applying to, say, Amazon and the Atlanta Braves, but make like a separate sports resume that you send to sports teams that say, hey, like, I made this R script or whatever, this R function that decides if a team should go for it on 4th down. And that's what would set you apart for most of these teams. Like, I think for like, just my understanding is like they have so many applicants, so many qualified people who are going to do very cool things in the world, whether they're related to sports or not, that are applying to these jobs, and they have to pick 1 or 2 people from them. I guarantee you, out of the people who apply to the Astros, I'm probably in like the 50th percentile for how skilled someone is in R, Python, or whatever. But I think just having the experience answering questions that you come up with, not only just answering them, but even coming up with creative questions to ask, I think is a lot of the battle. There are a lot of people who can make a really cool machine learning model, but there aren't a lot of people who can also come up with a question and answer it and also come up with that machine learning model too. So I think if you can, in an interview, impress them with your creativity and also your problem solving skills, I think that's what sets you apart from people who are just as, if not more, not gifted, but skilled as you are in terms of whatever skills they're looking for.
That's such a great answer, because one thing we have statistics through because I think you said your statistics and mathematics. Is that correct on your major? Or you're also econ or finance? Good.
Yeah, so it's data science, and then I have a minor in math and econ, but it's not like I don't take that many classes in either of those. But so there's data science, stats, and computer science at Purdue, and for data science, it's pretty much like a combination of stats and computer science.
We actually have a question from Jim Hassan here. Who might have been our first, he might have been in the, I thought it's so funny. I was like, Jeremy looks about my age. And then I was like, wait, that guy is my age. So the question is, we'll ask it right away. Is Jeremy going to write a 3rd book? Just questions right there. Is there plans for a 3rd book?
Okay. So commonly, huge misconception is that Jeff Passan and Jim Passan are the same person.
Oh, no. Sorry.
I don't blame everyone makes a mistake. So Jeff Passan, famous ESPN guy. Jim Passan is the guy that co-authored my 2 books with me. So he is, I guess he's wondering just as much as I am when we're going to find time to write a 3rd book. We've gotten a lot busier over the last couple of years. He has a lot of stuff on his plate, and I have a lot of stuff on my plate. So we're working towards it, but it'll come eventually, maybe.
Well, I'm glad we can dispel those misconceptions. And sorry, I apologize, Jim and Jeff, right there. But no, it's I ordered the book from Amazon. It hasn't come in yet. Supply chain is amazing these days. But with this right here, I had such a great question, but I think we already have one from Kelton right here, and I'll remember my question. Did you utilize GitHub to advertise yourself to employers? If so, did the Astros tell you how it helped or noticed you?
Yeah, so I personally didn't, but I also didn't because I was not really comfortable with GitHub and coding. Like I said, I'm not a great coder. So if I was a better coder, I would have done it because I would have had more things to show off. But not even just putting them on a resume, like I said, like you can attach your GitHub link, and I think that's probably your best avenue if you have like a large amount of things to show off. But even if you have an interview, just bringing up the idea that you study, it doesn't have to be as detailed. They won't look into your actual technical skills as much, but just the idea and the conclusion you came to, I think it's good enough. But GitHub, I think with like linking your GitHub, if you have some cool projects to show off, you definitely can't go wrong that way. I definitely would recommend that.
I remember my question now because it relates to what you're talking here about innovation and ideas. Because we've noticed there's a lot of people who maybe, are good with the technical side, but they don't have any kind of creativity or they don't ask the questions. You said something earlier about asking the big questions. Maybe should we go for it on 4th down? Or what is the correct decision here with someone on base? Should they try to steal? Where do you see analytics in sports going, whether it be basketball or baseball? Is there some sort of big questions people are currently analyzing that they're gathering a bunch of data and trying to optimize their decisions on?
Yeah, there are so many different things. I think with baseball, I think it's really interesting. There are just so many different questions that have not even been asked in baseball that are like, I think the next big things. So I think one example, I think for baseball is like lineup construction and what order should you put your hitters in. So if you have 9 players, all of them probably have different skill sets. Some are better than the others. How should you order them in a lineup to make it so that your team scores as many runs as possible? So there have been a couple of ways that this question has been answered in different books and stuff, but it's mostly been more theoretical. The research says you should put your best player second because you want him batting as often as possible. So if you're batting him second, it's the top of the order. So they'll bat as much as they can. And also, you don't want them hitting first because the person who's hitting first doesn't have as many players on base for them when they're hitting. So it's less opportunities to help your team score runs. So second is usually the good spot. Although historically teams have always said that third is the best spot, but I think there's been some research that said second is the best, and then I think fourth is the second best or something like that. I don't really know, but just questions like those. I don't think it's kind of the answer that they've come up with is kind of theoretical, and it doesn't really apply specifically to teams. So there are good and bad hitters, but there are also different types of good and bad hitters. There are good hitters who hit for a lot of power. There are good hitters who hit for a lot of contact, but don't hit many home runs. So the question is, like, there's definitely been tradition in baseball that has said you should hit your contact hitter, your fast guy first, then your power hitter third or fourth. But there's really been not as much to back it up, which is kind of surprising, at least publicly, because there are so many people who are interested in kind of disproving the myths of baseball history. So I think that's one kind of thing. I think with basketball, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a question that needs to be answered, but I think one impact of like analytics you'll see, at least over the last 10 years, is just the game is totally like different than it was 10 years ago. The shots teams take are so much different than they used to. So for example, if you watch a game in the 90s, you'd see a lot of jump shots like from mid-range, and you'd see some layups, you see some threes, but for the most part, it was kind of just, it wasn't random shot taking. It was take whatever shots you get are open, but now it's only take shots if you're within 3 feet of the basket or it's a 3-pointer, because every other shot, unless you're a really great basketball player, just the expected value of the shot is not worth the possession that you're giving up to take that shot. So unless you can shoot 60% from mid-range, like there's no point to take a shot from 18 feet away from the basket, take it from 24 and get the extra point, or take it next to the rim where it's just going to have a better chance of going in. So just questions like that. I think basketball is probably one of the sports you see analytics, I say, because I hate when people say that, but where you see just the impact of math on decision-making. I think players play the game totally differently, just subconsciously, because that's how the math has said, this is how you'll score the most points as you can.
It's really interesting to me because we kind of work these things in our head. Like you talked about expected value. If we're playing basketball and we notice I make more shots in this region, then the expected value in that region is higher. So we're going to start to go towards that region, and then the game might shift. You notice this where things start to change as teams start to change their strategies. The meta game kind of changes because of what teams are doing. And there are so many questions. So I'm going to try to give as many questions as I can. We'll go with JT's question right here. Do you think WAR is the best stat in terms of determining how valuable a player is? I know that's been a hot topic lately.
Yeah, I think if there was one number that you could use to just to put a value on a baseball player, I would definitely go for WAR, just because it's one of the only stats that combines pitching and also hitting and also defense and also base running into one stat. There are a bunch of, I think, better stats that you could use to describe one player's skill. Like I think there are better skills to describe just a player's hitting or just a player's, base running or whatever. But I think WAR does a really good job of approximating how much each of those things are valued and putting them into one number. I don't think it's a perfect end all be all. There's been a lot of discussion in the lockout about players getting paid directly as bonuses based on their WAR. I think that's a bad idea. Even though WAR, I think, is a good stat, it's an approximation. If you have a WAR of 3, if your 3 wins better than a borderline minor league player, you're probably in between 2 and 4 wins better than a minor league player, not exactly a 3. There's no exact science behind it. Obviously, it's a bunch of expected value, essentially context neutral calculations that make sense when you do one of them or 2 of them. But when you add them all up, it's more of an approximation than anything. So I think, if you had to put one number behind a player, I think WAR is the best. But I also caution you for using one number to argue about a player or whatnot.
Just hearing that from a statistical standpoint, if you're taking multiple metrics and making an aggregate, you're almost compounding your uncertainty, like standard deviations, standard errors, variances are getting all compiled into, yeah. So it's like, this is what we think they're at. And you can tell differences between the great players and the not so great. But you talked about that smaller range where it's like, there's not really much of a differential between those players. So hearing this from a not big sports person, it's really great to hear. Let's see right here. I'm going to pick out, if you see a question in the chat, I don't know if you have the chat open. If you see something you're like, that is such a great question that you want to answer, you're always welcome to pick one. People are just excited. I hear JT saying, did MLB Twitter merge with my stats class? So that's just a great comment to make. And then
If you want,
go ahead.
Sorry if I was typing a message. I'm happy to go like 10 minutes later, whatever, to answer some of these. I don't have anywhere too urgently to be. So if it goes a little long, that's all good. That's
excellent. We appreciate it because so keep those questions coming in. Question related to the Astros, so feel free. It's not too specific, but whatever you feel comfortable with talking about. What area are you specializing in with the Astros in the future? What statistical methods and theory, I guess, kind of class material, would you say push you the most as a competitive applicant in sports?
Okay, so to answer the first question, I'm working the research and development team for the Astros. I'm not exactly sure what that entails. I know every team kind of does it differently. For the most part, my understanding is just using statistical tools to come up with different insights about players. It's less decision-making, my understanding. That's more of the baseball operation side of thing. I think that's more where you'll actually make a trade for a player's baseball operations. But research and development is, I guess, kind of say creating a report about a player that might be traded, I guess is my understanding of it. So it's a little bit more technical. But I guess I haven't worked for the Astros yet. I haven't started yet. I started in May. So I don't know exactly what I'll be doing. I'm sure after my internship, I can't tell you exactly what I did, but I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a good combination for knowing baseball and also kind of knowing how to use some of the tools. And sorry, what was the second question? I kind of forgot as I was talking.
Oh, no worries. Kind of maybe like in your classwork. So I don't know the coursework at Purdue, but maybe regression, data mining, neural nets, support vector machine, cluster analytics. Maybe what have you been learning in your courses that have really propelled you forward? I'm hoping it's things we teach here.
Yeah, so that's funny because the way I learn best is by applying whatever I'm learning to baseball, because I try not to pretend that I can understand anything outside of sports and stuff like that. So if we're learning about, I don't know, some machine learning technique that just, I don't know, whatever, we'll just name whatever thing you want. And they gave us a data set about whether a loan is paid back. I'll change that and be like, oh, like that's like the same thing as asking if a player is going to strike out or something. Like it's not, you can't predict it with 100% certainty, but obviously there are some attributes that would be more likely for a player that would strike out in a given at bat. So kind of like how if a person has a lower credit score, they'll be less likely to pay their loan. If someone's taller, they're probably more likely to strike out because their strike zone's bigger. So I guess it's kind of the opposite as what you asked. I know it's not a great answer because I'm kind of cheating my way out of saying something, but I guess if I had to say, I learn better when I force myself to think about how I would apply this if I was working for a baseball team. So I guess there's nothing specifically, I guess, I would say is like my favorite thing that I've learned or how I'd like to apply, just because I always try and think of how I would apply it for if I was doing something I was actually interested in, which is not a good idea because if I end up not working for a baseball team, I'll probably be bored at my job because I'll be thinking about baseball the whole time. But that's kind of just how my mind operates sometimes. So.
No, I think you're doing the right thing. I hope you've done amazing, great things. You've set yourself on a path to very likely achieve your goals. But, I love video games. I love cartoons. So my class is centered around, Smash Brothers effects and stuff like that. So you can always find ways to weave in what you want. So I guess if I'm to give you any advice, just keep doing what you love and find ways to make that data. Like, do I want to make a neural net? No. But do I want to make a neural net that analyzes the best Smash player? Sure, that'd be fun.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So find a way to do something you're good at and weave in those things you love. So I think that was great advice. Just hopefully my students take that too. If you find what we're doing in class boring, what we're predicting, will someone leave their cell phone contract? I mean, I don't care if someone leaves their cell phone contract. I care more about these fun topics. And then other great, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you keep going.
Other questions. Devin had a few right here. Have you gotten to work with Purdue's baseball team with Rapsodo or things like that? I guess that's an analytics thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rapsodo is something that teams use. It's, I guess, so they'll use it for their pitchers and for their hitters. It's like a camera kind of thing that you set up when someone's throwing or hitting, and it's like a radar gun, but like a really high tech radar gun. So not only does it say how fast the ball is going, but also the spin the ball has, the projected distance. It tells you how far the ball's hit. Obviously not exactly, but if there's no wind, based on the spin and the angle it was hit and how hard it was hit, how far it went. So that information is a lot more useful than looking at outcomes. For baseball teams, they care way more about if you can hit the ball hard, you're going to get better outcomes on average. So it doesn't really matter if you hit 2 doubles in a game, because if they weren't hit very hard, it probably doesn't tell you that much about a player. Whereas if they hit the ball harder than anyone on the other team 3 times, like that's way more useful in the long run, because just statistically significant. It's a lot harder to replicate like skills than it is to replicate outcomes, at least in baseball. I personally haven't worked with the Purdue baseball team too much, but I do know that they do use like Rapsodo and tools like that, not only just in games, but also in practices to just train their players. It's really useful for pitchers because they can really create the optimal pitches, because it used to kind of just be a guessing game based on where should I put my fingers. This MLB grade told me to put my fingers here and the ball will move as much as possible. But now with data, it's not a guessing game. It's a science now. So you can design pitches that are going to go as fast and get as much break with your skill set. Obviously, not everyone's going to be throwing 100 miles per hour, but you can maximize your skill set to make the best pitches possible. So that stuff is really interesting to me. Haven't gotten the time to work too much with the Purdue baseball team, but I know that them and most other colleges, even smaller ones, are using that kind of stuff to improve, which is way different than what it was even 5 years ago. I feel like a lot of coaches were hesitant to adopt it, but then they fall behind if they don't. So.
And I know baseball analytics, just like you said, Moneyball is like the start of the explosion. It's just gotten bigger. Leland asks, what are your thoughts on baseball shift and its statistical impact on baseball? Like, what has it been doing? I know some teams highly utilize, from what I understand, the very little I understand, there's some teams that are like shifting every play, it seems, or every player. And then there's some doing little shifts. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So for people who don't know baseball too well, the idea is that historically, players would stand basically in the same spot for each play every time, no matter who's batting. So the first baseman will stand by first base. The second baseman will stand in between first and second base. The shortstop in between second and third. And then the third baseman by third base, which usually makes sense because on average, that's where you can maximize how much ground you're going to cover. You don't need analytics to know that you should put your players spaced out to, on average, cover the most amount of space. But a lot of players don't hit the ball uniformly throughout the field. Lefties, especially lefties who hit a lot of home runs, or who are power hitters, will hit the ball way more to the right side of the field than the left side of the field. So you're a team that's looking at and saying, okay, historically teams have put all their players in the same spot every time, but this guy has an 80% chance of hitting the ball to the right side of second base if he puts the ball in play. So why are we wasting a third baseman standing where there's a 5% chance of hitting a ground ball when there's a lot of open space in the short right field where there's a much greater chance of them hitting the ball where no one's really standing? So just that basic understanding is why teams shift. Every team does it. Like you said, some teams who are more willing to gamble on small, significant advantages they think they can get will do it more, where some are kind of still a little nervous about maybe a small sample size or just getting beat because you look stupid if you shift and then they hit the ball where your guy was supposed to be standing traditionally. A lot of people get mad at you. So some coaches are a little bit more hesitant, but you definitely see the shift being used way more now than it was. And it's working too, as you'd expect, put players where the ball is going to be hit more and they're going to get to more baseballs, which forces guys to try and hit it over their head. There's been a lot more home runs hit. There's been a lot of more strikeouts because a lot of these players have skill sets that it's hard to, when you play baseball for 25 years, stop hitting the ball in the place you've been hitting it. It's a lot easier to just sell out and try and hit it over everyone. So players are hitting more home runs now. They're striking out more because their careers would be ended if they kept doing the same thing, because it's so hard to change habits that you pick up. So I think the shift is good on a team scale. If I'm working for a team, I say the shift is really great. But if I'm a fan, I don't know how I feel about the shift, because yes, my team is winning more games, but also I think the product is a little bit more boring. There's a lot less room for athleticism because you do have more players standing, but they're also moving less. They're making the plays more, but also it's probably less fun to watch. So I think you have to look at it from a league versus team perspective. If you care about your team winning, you should want them shifting as much as possible. But if you're a fan, you should want maybe the MLB to step in and say, here are some regulations, perhaps. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of those regulations where two players have to be standing on one side of second base or whatever. But if you're a fan, I can see why. Baseball is an entertainment business first. So it makes sense to kind of have whoever's interest you're looking at you'll have a different perspective, I guess.
Well, that's such a great way to put it, because the optimum pitcher could strike everyone out and it'd be quite a boring game. I mean, I guess you might be rooting for the person to get the 100th perfect game, but after a while, if you have two optimum pitchers, the game never ends. So From a fan perspective, this might be cutting down on some of the greatness or of Mark McGwire hitting home runs and all the interesting stuff that happened that I remember. And people are especially wondering right now about the data when it comes to baseball analytics. How do you, scrape the data from online? And how do you get this data? And there was a follow-up question someone had. How do you refrain from getting overwhelmed with looking at sets of data with many variables? So kind of the whole data aspect. Where do you get your data and how do you analyze this data?
Yeah, there are a lot of different places. Sorry for talking fast. I know there are a lot of questions and I talk very fast sometimes when I talk about something I'm interested in. So different places you can get your data from. For baseball specifically, Baseball Reference, the company I work for, obviously, first and foremost, is a great place to get data. Fangraphs.com is great because they also have a very easy way to download data. So you can get 150 years of historical baseball data into a CSV in 30 seconds or whatever. BaseballSavant is the website that's operated by MLB.com. And that has all of the pitch by pitch data. So kind of like what I was saying with Rapsodo, it has all of that data for every MLB game over the last 5 years. So every pitch thrown, how hard it was thrown, the part of the strike zone it ended up in, how hard it was hit. That stuff is really cool that it's public because it's a lot of information, like gigabytes and gigabytes of stuff. So if you want to really dive into a subject, I would definitely check out Baseball Savant because you can download those. There's also Baseball R is a R package that I think allows you to download that data pretty easily too. So, and there's the same thing in Python as well. So there's just a lot of different resources. The layman database is really cool for historical stuff. But it's really cool with baseball because it's not a sport that just started 10 years ago. We have 150 years of data and how it's been played. And the rules have pretty much stayed the same for the most part of the last 100 years. So you can look at a lot of different trends over the course of baseball, and all that data is the most available. It's been, I probably say the sports industry, especially baseball, is probably one of the industries you'll have the most available data sets in compared, you can find stuff on Kaggle for any industry, but I think baseball is just the easiest place to find stuff, which is really cool.
And what I really love right here is, one, you're mentioning some of the concepts we cover in a lot of our classes. Like we talk about Kaggle competitions, and Kaggle has a lot of data too. We also, I've had a few students use NBA Fast R. There's a few things with R that can pull in and basically scrape the data for you from these sites. And you said Baseball Savant was another one?
Yes, that's the same as kind of what the NBA one. I'm not too familiar just because I don't do too much NBA stuff, but Baseball Savant is what you'd want to do. And I don't know the exact Python and R things for them, but yeah, you could look it up and find it pretty easily. So definitely would recommend checking this out. They're huge data sets. You can filter down by pitcher, by hitter. They have also a lot of cool graphics on their site too that are just kind of done. So you don't really have to create them. But just a lot of good place for a fan to be able to just look and see a pitcher's trends, but also a data scientist who really wants to get to the bottom of something. Well, it's really useful for a lot of things. So just playing around in it, you get lost for hours. So
I think that's the thing is I'll just analyze data for fun sometimes. I'll create functions for fun. And like you're saying this, when you just get lost in it, and what you're actually doing is you're just growing your skill sets by doing something you enjoy. So if anyone's getting inspired by this right now, reach out to me if you want. I know how to get these data sets. And if you don't code, don't worry. We can load CSV files into Jump. That's what we use in our introduction classes. So we use a GUI software where you can point click everything, and we can load the data into Jump too. Maybe not a 5 gigabyte file, but I guess we'll do 2 more questions. And I just want to thank you so much for your time right here. Alex asks, would either law or business path be better for getting into trying to join up a sports team? Would you suggest someone go more law or business related? Kind of a big question. I don't even know the answer.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think I'd be the best person to answer that question just because I'm not too familiar with that business side of baseball. I think having business skill would be valuable for any industry. So I would definitely recommend having that background, whether or not you go into law. But what I will say is the people who get hired for jobs in baseball come from so many different backgrounds that it doesn't even matter what you study in college. Obviously, maybe that's different for law. I'm not too familiar with all the law technicalities and stuff, but a lot of people I've met in front offices are like not data science majors. I know that's not what you're asking because you're not really caring about data science, but I've met more people who like majored in philosophy or like neuroscience that are working in front offices than people who were like computer science majors. So like I said, it's the creativity of how you apply what you learned to what you do than it is just the technical skills. You can learn the technical skills that are required in your job pretty quickly. For the most part, there are people that can teach you that kind of stuff. But it's the creativity of how you can apply neuroscience to a pitcher throwing 100 pitches in the game and how their brain works with their muscles and stuff like that compared to someone who's just really good at coding. Or I don't know how never taken a philosophy class, but it's cool that you can use philosophy to become a data scientist for a baseball team.
And I think like if I'm to go off what you said right there, it's taking chances. I had a student telling me he took a chance and kind of, I think he tweeted someone, it's not me or you, but he actually ended up working for some people and meeting Michael Jordan in person, like the Michael Jordan. So
nice.
I know, right? I was like, when he said he met Michael Jordan, I was like, wait, he's like, Michael Jordan. I'm just like, we don't usually talk about Michael Jordan, but it's taking these chances. It's using your imagination and coming up with things, because that's what companies want. They want someone who's, I think you said, trying to do new things, being innovative. They don't want you to say, what do I do next? They want you to be like, hey, I've got this idea. Especially a lot of these teams, they're trying to find the next big thing. Let me ask you this. I've got a few more I could ask, but if you've been watching the chat, did you see one that jumped out to you to be our last question of the night that you were like, this would be a really great, if you saw one that you like, I could pick one out of the chat, but if you're like, I'd really like this right here. I had one picked, but I want you to pick the last question of the night if you'd like.
I'll answer a couple really quick. Based on the way you view stats, who's the best player in MLB right now, in your opinion? I think it's still Mike Trout. So I'll go with him. Do people hire private statisticians? I saw someone say yes. You can consult for teams. I know a few people who have done that, who consult for a few different teams on different signings and stuff like that. I don't know how you go about doing that, because that would be cool, but I know you can do that. So what's the best career path for sports stats? Like I said, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, as long as you have the creativity and the skill set, not even just the skill set, but just the creativity and the ability to answer questions. You can have whatever career path. I've talked to so many people who did so many different things before they worked for a team, that it doesn't really matter, to be honest with you. As long as you can, as long as you have the skill set and you can show that you can answer questions that they want to answer, that matters way more than the 3 jobs you had before you applied. So I'll answer one more if you can find any that I missed.
I have, I guess, one more that I wanted to throw at you real quick, because I always like hearing like maybe what technical skills are going to help you. There's a question on Tableau and Power BI. Have you seen much implementation of those? Thoughts on Tableau, Power BI?
Yeah, not too familiar. I know baseline Tableau. Tableau is really good for data visualization. If you don't want to learn, I think like ggplot and R is probably better than Tableau, just because you can do a lot more things with it, and that it's a little bit more difficult to learn than Tableau, where you can just drag things into places and it makes cool graphs, and like really good for people who don't have a huge technical skill base. So I'm not going to like diminish Tableau, but I think ggplot and R is probably going to do the same thing that Tableau can do if you like spend a couple weeks learning it, and then also way more after a couple weeks.
Were you just trying to make my night? Were you just trying to end on the perfect? Keep going. I'll let you talk about Power BI, but thank you so much. If you can't tell, I was very happy to hear that.
Because I'm not very familiar with it, so I will on it. I know that it is used, but I don't know the extent to it, just because I haven't really had hands-on experience with it. But yeah, you can do the same thing with Tableau, or as with ggplot and R as you can with Tableau. I think if you just spend a little bit of time trying to familiarize with it, but also I can understand why you wouldn't want to use R, just because it's kind of annoying for some small kind of things, that if you just have a small data set, it makes more sense to just drag a CSV into Tableau and make it how it's a lot more user friendly for people who don't know how to code. So both are good. I think R is probably, you'll find it more often just because it's way more customizable, but yeah.
It'd be like hiring a private chef to make you a snack. It's like
right.
ggplot can do so much. No, that made my night hearing. Obviously, there's so many tools out there. The main thing I would suggest, and you've been saying, is just jump into it, find out what you like to do with data, start analyzing it. Jeremy, I'm going to let you have the final word. I just want to give a big thank you. So chat, give a big thank you. And Jeremy, take us out with the final word right here.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate everyone who came in to listen. I always love to talk about sports stats. That was 40 minutes. I don't know how, but I could go on and on about whatever you guys have. So my DMs on Twitter are open. If I didn't answer your question, I'll happily respond, especially if you're not asking anything that's like too hard to like. I know a lot of people will ask me stats and stuff, like that's kind of annoying to research, but if you have a personal question or like, how can I answer an opinion question, I'll definitely answer it, because obviously my opinions are, in my mind, more accurate than anyone else's, because they're my opinions. So I'm happy to talk about my opinions. But yeah, if you have anything for me, follow me on Twitter at @LBRandomStat. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just my name, Jeremy Frank. Buy my books if you like baseball stats. If you don't, then I would not buy them, because I don't think you'll take too much out of them. But yeah, thanks for coming and listening. Go Volunteers, unless they're playing Purdue again in the postseason. Twice in a row now. So sorry about both the football and the basketball a couple of years ago. But yeah, enjoy talking to you guys. So thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, and have a good evening, everybody. Bye for now. Bye.